Hello, this is Martin from Hornbeam Hedgehog Sanctuary. This video is made up of a few clips I recorded while walking in the woods with Simon of Rectors Wood. I had a fascinating walk with him and learnt quite a lot about trees in general and also management of woods. So I thought I'd share this with you. It's not a professional video, I just combined certain clips I thought would be interesting. So yeah, let's play the video and I hope you enjoy it.
In my opinion, this is one of the best features of the woodland. It's actually what happens when you don't trim your beech on a regular basis. You can actually see this used to be laid in years gone by, and now I think forms a wonderful sort of boundary marker to the wood. How old it is, I don't know. Perhaps 400 years old, I'm not quite sure. What I'm trying to do is restore the woodland from what's called its pause condition, a plantation on an ancient woodland site. But what that entails is trying to, if you like, gap up where there are gaps, either encouraging natural regeneration or planting where necessary. I'm also busy collecting rubbish from the lane, rubbish from over 40 years ago when they planted the conifers, and indeed the odd tree guard myself, which I've neglected to collect earlier. It's an ever-going battle. Yes, I think the answer is yes. So,
It's quite quiet here
at the moment,
at the moment.
yeah. Sometimes it's unbearable, unfortunately.
How many acres have you got here, Woodland?
52.
52 acres. Wow.
It's like a big small wood, if there's something.
Yeah. And it's, as far as density of the woods, is it pretty much like this, or
No.
it's not?
I'm going to show you, well, the middle bits where they ripped out the old oaks
Yeah.
are plantation,
Right.
and they're pretty boring. And there are big gaps, which I'm planting up. Are you filming it?
I am. Yes. Yes.
There are gaps which we're planting up, and they're not always that interesting. But there are other bits which make it very diverse.
Right. Okay.
So, would you like to follow me?
I would love to. So this is the wiggly way. So it was a path that was trying to create a path, but it ended up being quite a wiggly path.
And what I planted along all the edges of it were crab apples.
Crab apples along the edges.
Being the sort of pollinator corridor. And cherries, wild cherries.
So you're still planting trees here then?
Oh yeah, all the time. So it's a wild cherry, planted a few years ago.
Wild cherry.
And you can see it's doing
well.
Okay. It's doing
Yeah, it's doing well. A bit of hazel, some crab apple.
This is a wild service tree.
A wild
Service tree.
service tree.
Yeah, you may not have heard of those.
No, I haven't.
Right, well, later on I'll show you some gifted to me from a local wood. But you've seen Checkers pubs, haven't you?
Yes.
Well, Checkers pubs arguably come from wild service trees.
Okay.
Basically, they produce a fruit which is made into alcoholic, drink.
Ah.
And they are quite rare because they're slow growing, and it may be that when this was all grubbed up for the conifers, they ripped all the old wild service trees out, but they are indicative of very old woodlands.
So what part of the tree did they use?
For the beer, the fruit.
The fruit.
Yeah. It's a bit like a date.
Oh.
It's a bit like a date.
No, I haven't ever seen that.
And I it doesn't look like it, it tastes like it.
Yeah.
Last year I ate a few, and I also planted some seeds which are still in my fridge in the hope that they will germinate.
Right.
But they've got lovely white flowers. So basically I'm trying to, if we didn't do anything, you would have oaks and hornbeam. And what I'm trying to do is get a succession of flowering. So starting off with cherry plum, which is by the entrance, then you get willow, then you get wild cherry, then you get crab apple, then you get wild service, and then of course you've got hawthorn coming in along the way, and also blackthorn, and finally you get small leaf lime.
Do you find you have to clear some of the wood to make way for new trees, or
Not at the moment.
not? Okay.
Not at the moment.
Okay.
Well, I have different views on how to manage the woodland, and I'm in a bit of a flux there as to how to manage it apart.
So these are oak.
Well, the oak. Yeah, basically, I wrote to a lot of the local landowners,
Right.
like Lord Salisbury,
Yeah.
like Sir Thomas Pilkington. People had ancient oaks,
Yeah.
like 1,000-year-old oaks.
All right.
And I said, can I please have some of your acorns? Because if you look at this oak here, right, that's approximately 42 years old. The acorn came from Monmouthshire.
Monmouthshire.
Yes, of all places. So these ones are from West Hart, no, where it's actually, these are from the Domesday oak, one of the best oaks, and owned by the Pilkington family. Beautiful,
right.
beautiful, beautiful
Yeah.
tree. And we met Sir Thomas Pilkington, the 14th Baronet, like he was. Wonderful chap, wonderful chap. And he let us have some acorns, and I took an oakling back, which I'd managed to germinate.
So these are you've actually from acorns you've grown these right from the start then?
Correct.
Oh wow. Yeah. So how long did it take to get to this stage?
Well, that is quite small, but I have I planted these in. Hang on, let me check where this. 2014.
2014. So there's quite. Are they all the same? Are species?
Well, no,
or?
this is much higher. It's doing much better. And why some do better than others? I mean, normally what a forester would do is plant loads of them and then just, chop the ones down you didn't want. And I don't really like doing that.
You've got a double protection layer. You've got the sleeve, and then you've got wire around the outside.
Yeah,
So
well,
what are you protecting against?
Well, originally what I did was I had a plastic guard over the top. But what I will show you.
Yeah.
The fallow deer shred them.
Right. Okay.
So I made these myself. It was almost by accident. I bought some guards a bit like this, and they're like 12 quid each, which is obviously very expensive.
Yeah.
So I bought some fencing. I make them myself. It take me about half an hour.
Right.
They take a long time, and you're constantly cutting yourself on these
Oh
sharp
yeah, I
bits.
can imagine. Yeah.
But they cost about half the price, and they will last indefinitely. And when the trees are big enough, I'll probably give them or sell them to someone else.
Yeah. We can reuse them. As well.
You reuse them again and again. They're lovely, despite the muntjac.
So these are primroses.
The primroses, yeah. I think they're gorgeous.
Why are they growing right here?
Well, that's a good point, because this would have been disturbed, because obviously these are new oaks. I don't know.
You've got quite a few of them.
Yeah.
It goes down the back there as well. Lovely.
They are lovely though, aren't they? I love them. Fen means oak, bramble, bracken.
Right.
Basically quite acidic.
Right.
We're about to move to a very small section, which is called W8,
Right.
which means ash, field, maple, which means it's alkaline.
Ah.
It's very different, and it's frankly a lot more interesting.
So there, that W is a grading of the wood. Obviously wood 8. And then in that you'll have a list of types of trees that would be inside that wood. And I've got you. Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah. It's a box, and the reason I planted them is because they flower. And guess what? Deer don't eat them.
Oh, so they're pretty good hedgerow items then.
Yeah, I'd say possibly they are native.
Box, did you say?
I'm sure about the trees here, but there's probably not much to see. But I can assure you, in the summer, the animals can't.
So underneath here there's chalk.
Yeah.
And your plan for this part of the wood is
It's to basically scythe it
scythe it.
and then put the horizon over there to reduce the nutrient values and hopefully encourage more and more wildflowers.
Right.
There are orchids in the next woodland. It would be wonderful to have them here.
And this is on the slope as well.
It's on the slope.
Yeah.
More primroses. There are some cowslips up there. And there's also some rubbish.
Okay, yes. So these are violets. Just about see them. They're very small, aren't they?
They are tiny. But perfectly formed. Perfectly formed.
They're dotted around the place.
Right, what we're going to try and do, because there's lots of gaps.
You parted some, sorry, what?
Hazel.
Hazel, yep.
And Hedgehog. Because what the deer do is they shred the garden. However, I'm gradually, this is an old hazel coppice stool,
Okay.
Well,
This is fantastic. Well done.
yeah. Well, I used to have volunteers, you see,
Brilliant.
but not for a long time, and they're quite mature now.
Loads of bugs will be in there.
Yeah. No. I think that's wonderful.
It's a good use of the old wood. Also creating paths, but it's a good anything that allows it to rot and.
What happens here is they shred this, and the deer simply. It's like laying. I told my friend it's like laying the table. I had a friend called Richard Bromler, who's a ex-Cambridge man, Rothamsted scientist, very bright guy. But he was adamant about doing things in certain ways.
Yep.
And for one thing, he said we should plant hazel here.
Yeah.
I now think we should have planted more variety. And I told him if you only have a guard up to here, the deer will eat it.
Yep.
So what I'm gradually doing, as you can see, I know this looks a disaster, but I'm gradually replacing all these guards with the metal guard.
Oh, they're what 2 meters high as well.
Yeah. And it's going to take me a long time, I know, but that is the plan, is to do that. And these, the deer will not be oops, that one nearly banged in.
So 2 meters high, no deer's going to get that.
Yeah.
No.
Now what we have here is a Corsican pine. One of the trees they didn't fell.
So it's kind of an odd tree, stuck on its own there.
Just a timber, but we didn't see odd tree. But actually, I quite like it.
What's that? Sorry again? What's that?
Holm.
Hall oak.
Holm. Holm.
Holm oak.
As in Ian Holm,
Gotcha.
who played Bilbo.
Ah, that's a beautiful tree.
Well, in a way, I quite like them because they're not natives.
Oak, did you say?
It's an oak. Yeah,
Why is it
evergreen?
evergreen?
Well, because it is.
Oh right. Huh.
Because it is.
That's interesting. It's big as well.
Anyway, so this whole area used to be dominated by this laurel, and over a hectare of it.
Right.
And I'm gradually cutting it.
You have a hectare of laurel.
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
But you can see, for the last few years, basically employing people 3 days a year to cut it. And, it's very, very expensive. I simply can't afford to do it in one go because it'd be thousands.
Huh. Well, the trees now.
Oh yeah, they are. But they were planted by for Victorians, probably for game birds.
Oh, you cover, yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
And the trees here, and the trees there.
Yeah.
Well, they are a species of tree called aspen, right?
Aspen, yes.
And they are not individual trees; they are all one organism.
Oh right.
I believe one of the biggest organisms in the world is one in America somewhere. But this is about a hectare, and we've discovered by cutting back the bracken,
Yeah.
we can let what are called ramettes. I'll show you some ramettes. These are ramettes, they're called. And aspen would never have been planted. The forest commission, when we first bought the place, said we should poison them.
Right.
Which I'm glad to say we didn't.
Yeah.
And they shiver in the wind, and allegedly,
Yeah.
it is said they shiver at the memory of the crucifixion.
Oh really?
That's the folklore.
That's
It's
interesting.
also known as a shield tree because people used to make shields out of them because they're quite light.
Okay. So
And
I guess they're
matches.
light and hardy as
Yeah,
well then.
yeah.
Yeah.
But this is probably the oldest organism in the woodland because you can see how big it is.
Yep.
It goes for perhaps just over a hectare, and it's all one organism. It's
Wow.
they're not individual trees.
That's amazing.
So what I'm trying to do is bring them back. And you see that those Harris fencing over there.
Yes.
That's not just a load of rubbish. It's basically the idea is just to keep the deer off it,
Right.
and then they will all come through. And I've done that in 3 different places.
So presumably, I'm assuming that obviously trees carry diseases. Then, if a disease was to actually or manage to get to this particular tree, it would be quite catastrophic because the whole area would be.
Well, it would, yeah, it would. But most of the diseases come from people's intervention, frankly. Oaks and ash and all that thing.
Right.
As aspen is useless in inverted commas,
Yep.
I'm hoping it won't.
Okay.
Used to be, all this area, we've got a map, an 1832 map,
Yes.
and it was all open.
Oh, I can see the deer tracks.
Yeah.
So this is a deer lawn.
Yeah, it may be always a deer lawn because a unit basically is to hunt them.
Right. Okay.
So we're gonna maybe we just keep going. You can hear a very.
There's a muntjac down
You
there.
see,
Look.
you see the monkey looking at.
Yeah, he's bouncing. Just about to see him.
I thought we might see some cow, but on the other hand, we're talking so loudly they probably.
There's a few muntjacs here.
This is the fence we put up, by the way.
Right.
Which I know looks a bit coldish like, but the idea is that the woodland will regenerate inside it.
Right. Well, it's a lot, obviously.
And it is.
It obviously is working.
No, it is regenerating inside it.
So almost Hornbeam was coppice, and it's mainly for tools, wasn't it?
But mostly for bread ovens.
Bread ovens.
Bread ovens.
Okay.
Or for. Oh, you could use them in shoe lasts and cogs. You're quite right. But they have a very high calorific value as well.
Right.
So they were burned to make charcoal.
Yep.
But this one, you think the trees just go upwards? Well, you can see that one's gone down, and it's coming back up again.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's a branch from the tree.
Yeah.
Ah, and it's come down here under the ground.
Yeah.
And then it's come back up again.
It's come back up again.
And there's another tree there.
So I quite like this hornbeam. I mean, hornbeams are good when they get older.
That's a good age, actually. Look at it.
It's a reasonable age, isn't it?
Yeah.
How old is it? I'm sorry, I don't know.
It's a good age. I haven't got any that size. That's for sure.
Well, it's short, but this is an old woodland, I suppose. Now, whether it's an ancient, I mean, it's classified, as I say, as a plantation ancient woodland site.
Yeah.
And ancient woodland is defined as pre-1600.
Right. Okay.
So it will be pre-1600.
Right.
But it probably may not be primary woodland.
Right.
And primary woodland is when it's basically since the Ice Age.
Okay.
In fact, I also take you down here to show you where the Romans may have been involved.
Oh, Romans as well. Quick one, Simon. How long has this stack of wood been here?
Well, that's a good question. I think 10 years now.
10 years plus?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. So that's kind of the state that it would get to, which is absolutely fantastic. Most of it's rotted down. Brilliant.
Well, someone did a measurement, a foot a year, so it could be perhaps 700 years old.
Wow.
So the oak trees are not anything like that, but the coppice stools, they're long.
700 years old?
Possibly.
Possibly.
If you measure it, I think it's 6 by 7 feet, and a foot of 100 years. So we're not going to copy it then.
No.
Well, I'll show you now some of the. We're going to scoot back and
Okay.
we wend our way back.
Okay.
These are on terraces.
The terraces. Oh, I see. Yeah, yeah.
Hair?
Oh, yeah, there's a hair down there.
And these are maybe what's called lynchettes.
Lynchettes.
Yeah, lynchettes, which are old medieval agricultural strips.
Okay.
And one theory is that when the Romans left, certain places would have gone back to woodland.
Yes.
And this does not look natural. It looks.
Yeah, it's stepped
like a
down.
paddy field,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it?
So it's stepped. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4 steps. Obvious steps.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But on the other hand, some of the coppice stools are damn old. So.
Well, it's interesting. Between the steps, you've actually got some sort of pathway or.
Well, yes. yeah. So whether this is some agriculture, whether someone said it may be a Roman influence. That's growing and maturing into a woodland.
Yeah. So they're quite new trees, all of them, aren't they?
About 40 years old.
40.
But sorry, the oaks are 40 years old. Obviously the birch and stuff are different ages.
Pretty dense. Be quite dark in here.
It is dark.
Yeah.
It is dark. There's very little ground flora.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons for coppicing is to encourage ground flora. But on the other hand, a lot of invertebrates like it dark.
They do,
don't. They don't all like it light. There's a guy in Oxford called Clive Hambler who 25 years ago busted the myth about woodlands needing light.
Right.
And I based a lot of my views on how to look after woodland on his work. Albeit I have decided to do some coppicing, which he would argue you should only do this for aesthetic and cultural reasons.
Right.
He doesn't believe, he's not a great fan.
Right.
And he knows a lot more about these things than I do.
He knows a lot more. Yeah.
The oaks. They also planted some hornbeam.
Yep.
Hey, a hornbeam, well, you know yourself, it grows pretty easily.
Yep.
You don't need to plant hornbeam in a hornbeam wood. In my see the deer.
Oh yeah. Right. Bolting. That's 2, 3. There's 3. There's 3.
We have heard some of those. 20 in
Just standing there. There's no way you can see on this camera. But...
there. No. I mean, I love the deer, and the thing is, the deer aren't very good for ground flora and regeneration, obviously. But on the other hand, a woodland like this, the ground flora is knackered by the pause process in the first place. And,
Yeah.
And I am trying in other ways to combat that.
So
Obviously, deer do make it have an impact. Obviously.
so to protect the bluebells, you've got a few spots.
I've called this, I call it a Waterloo square, actually.
Right. Okay.
But the idea is that it will regenerate naturally. So when the bracken comes up,
Yep.
I literally take shears out and cut the bracken.
Yep.
And the idea is that the trees will come up naturally. And eventually I'll move it and put it somewhere else. I think the trees are fine, but it's just that obviously the bluebirds get hammered every time. You can see they're getting hammered. It's very telling, isn't it? Very telling. But just some hornbeams coming up through this. There's another one up there where cherry is coming up, which is really gratifying.
You got a few bluebells in there.
Yeah, actually a lot of it's grass, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. A lot of it's grass, but you still got fair amount. Another few weeks.
But lugging these things through the wood,
Yeah, you're in the middle of the nowhere and you've got this.
it's really hard work.
Did you do this yourself then?
I do it myself.
Oh my god.
And what worries me is that I have an artificial hip which is clearly wearing out.
Yeah.
It's clearly wearing out. And I'm quite worried if I incapacitate myself, I'm in
Well, yeah.
big trouble. Antonio had to do all the work and stuff. Anyway, right. I don't know dominate, but been certainly a dominant tree in this part of the world over 5,000 years ago was small-leaf lime. And one of the great things about it is it flowers.
Right.
It also makes the soil more alkaline, down to 35 centimetres.
Yeah.
It's great for worms. Everyone says oaks are the best wildlife trees. They probably are. But these things aren't bad. And one of the interesting things is you will not see any small leaf lime leaves here. And the reason for that is because they're so palatable, the worms take them straight down.
Oh right.
And they improve the soil no end. And one of the reasons I know this is I've become acquainted with a chap called Professor Donald Pigott, right?
Right.
Now, he used to be the director of the Cambridge Botanical Garden,
Yeah.
and he's the world authority on lime trees.
All right.
He's now 92. He lives in the Lake District, and he's a super chap. And honestly, the things he can tell you about the Second World War and memories which are really
Lots of stories.
fresh to him. And basically, I've learned something about lime to him. Now, one of the things of this lime is I bought it, and whether it's the right provenance or not, is questionable. So now I'm desperately trying to. Well, I basically there's a chap I met via the Royal Forestry Society called Simon Leverdale. Very, very knowledgeable chap. He has a woodland and he's got small leaf lime growing naturally. And last summer he allowed me to take some seedlings.
Right.
So I mean, look, some of them are that big, right? But I would rather have seedlings that big than ones I'm not certain about.
Mm-hmm.
I planted 500 in 2017, and I had them DNA tested,
Yes.
and they did come out as small leaf lime.
There you go.
But nevertheless, Professor Pigott made me query,
Right.
whether the real thing. But nevertheless, these are now beginning to flower, and I just think they're great. I just love them. And I went to Poland to look at small leaf lime growing in the wild, as it were. And some beautiful specimens there. Wonderful oaks there as well. Wonderful everything.
This is a Christmas tree.
It's the Christmas tree, and always is. Yeah. And I now regret cutting so many down, but we followed advice. I wish I'd left many more. And here is a badge in the tree, which I'm sure you've seen before.
Oh yeah. Badger poo. I'll get
Badger
too
poo,
near
lots of
that.
badger poo, more badger poo, I'm sure. So what's that doggy called?
Fern.
Fern.
Fern, F-E-R-N.
Oh, fern. I thought fern. We'd love to roll in it.
Oh yes, I'm just keeping her well clear of it. There's enough fox poo she rolls in. Oh, badger poo as well.
What she's going to do is she's going to smooth it all out. And the idea is then that we can use an all-terrain vehicle
Yes.
to collect the coppice here. So I intend to coppice this bit.
Right.
And the reason for this bit is because A, I can make it accessible.
So it's an old logging through pass. It's
Well,
just,
it's a sort of logging tree path
Yeah.
anyway. And also, it's near the light. It's on the southern side. And then when the hornbeam's, coppiced, I'm going to plant things like cherry and all the other trees I mentioned to have a bit more flowers. Because otherwise it's just hornbeam.
yeah.
And also some of the oaks are struggling in here, and I think the hornbeam is out competing them. So, and I tell you what, I should admit, oops, you're right. I was going to show you some more aspen. The woodland could never be better than it was, say, in the early 1970s, because that's when it was in its original condition. Principally Victorian-aged oaks with hornbeam coppice stools, and some of those coppice stools will be 500 plus years old.
Right.
But on the other hand, I think there's an opportunity to restructure the woodland to make it perhaps more interesting going forward by the introduction of a species which possibly were never here. One of those would be small leaf lime, which would have been the dominant species here over 5,000 years ago.